So I don't usually post movie related content, but I recently went to see The Odyssey by Christopher Nolan. I went reluctantly because my mum wanted to see it and she took me and my sister. I wasn't planning on seeing the movie just because based on the trailer I knew that I wouldn't be a fan of this adaptation, but nonetheless I did want to talk about it because it actually wasn't that bad. I'm going to start with the things I actually enjoyed about the movie. First of all, I thought the take on magic was really cool. I've never seen magic be interpreted in that way in a movie. Well, actually I think I might already have seen stuff like that, but I thought it was really interesting to see it shown in that way. It made it seem more concrete and more real, especially the scene with Cersei, the way she had to kind of mold the men into pigs. I thought that was really interesting and original compared to what I've seen before. I like that it wasn't just snap your fingers and then they're pigs, and that she actually had to put effort into it to make it happen. The second thing I really liked is the fact that most of the female actresses looked like they were not wearing any makeup at all, especially Anne Hathaway in this one scene. It was so good and I really appreciated that because it just made it more natural and more real again. Now, speaking of Anne Hathaway, she truly saved this movie for me. Her, Tom Holland and Zendaya. The acting in general was really good, but Anne Hathaway, oh my god, it was amazing. She has this one monologue in the movie and it gave me shivers because it was just so great. It's this moment where she's talking to Tom Holland and he's like, oh, you should marry one of the guys, and the devotion that she has for Odysseus and the love that she has for him, you can actually see it and feel it, and it's so good. Now, speaking of great acting, we also had Zendaya in this movie, and I think that Zendaya as a goddess is peak casting. Although I did like her version of Athena, I feel like we're forgetting that Athena is a goddess of war. She's the goddess of war strategies and wisdom and all of that, and I think they didn't explore that side of the character enough. All of the gods in this movie felt a bit too human. That's kind of disappointing because in the movie there are loads of scenes that are really horrific and really creepy, and I think they could have exploited the gods in that way. Like, the gods in Greek and Roman mythology are so scary when you actually think of it, and since the movie took like some of the themes from the Odyssey and made them more creepy, I feel like they could have done the same with the gods, but instead they made them all very human, and that is different but also not that much. I feel like we've already seen loads of movies where the gods are more human, so I wish they would have gone in a different direction. The last few things I really loved about the movie is that Elliot Page was in it, and I was so happy to see him pop on my screen because I love that actor so much. The last time I saw him in anything was in the finale of Umbrella Academy, which wasn't great, but I was so happy to see him and I want to see more of that actor. People need to cast him in more movies because he is so good and I love him so much. And then the last great thing about this movie that my little sister really wanted me to talk about is Tom Holland in a skirt. She came out of the cinema and she said that's the best part of this movie, is seeing Tom Holland in a skirt. And I actually couldn't agree more. I really get that. She has great taste. I actually need to show her the umbrella dance because I don't think she's seen that yet, and I think she's gonna love that. Moving on to the negative parts of this movie and the things that I liked a little bit less. First of all, there's this scene with a dog and it is heartbreaking, and that's the only reason that it's in the negative points, because it's actually a beautiful scene and it's really great. Everything about it is just so beautiful and heartbreaking, but it just hurt too bad for me to consider it a good part of the movie. I cried, okay, everyone cried, it was horrible. Now, the actual bad parts of this movie to me, even though Christopher Nolan did try to include a bit of the female perspective, for example, we have Cersei and her rant about why she turned the men into pigs and everything, that was really interesting, but I still feel like the movie was a bit too male-centered, which, granted, the original myth is very male-centered. The whole story is about the male experience, going to war and all of that, I guess. But I think it's time that we get a female take on the story. And maybe Christopher Nolan wasn't the right director to do that, but I think it's time we get a female director that makes an adaptation of this story. We're gonna get epic soon, and I feel like epic does include more of the female perspective of the story, and I really like that, but I still think it would be great to get a female director to do an adaptation of the Odyssey. I think it's time. The reason also that I feel like it was still too male-centered is just one example, Athena, which I already talked about earlier in this video. She is such an important part of the story, and we only got like 3 scenes with her in it, and she barely says 3 sentences. Then obviously, speaking about Athena, there's also what I said before, which is she's a goddess of war. Where is that aspect of her character? Where is it? Like, What the fuck, dude? Then after that, we should talk about the costumes. I don't know much about history and I don't know much about ancient Greece, but I'm pretty sure that what we saw in the movie isn't historically accurate at all, and I really hope that Epic will be more historically accurate. Finally, the biggest problem, okay, this actually pissed me off during the movie and it really bugs me. Penelope is so in love with Odysseus, okay, you can see that, it's so easy to see the devotion and everything. Why is Odysseus not the same? Where is the yearning? Where is the devotion? Where is the love? This myth is essentially a man trying to get back home to his wife. He wants to see his wife. He does all of that to see his wife. And in this version, it just seemed like he didn't care, okay? Like, yes, there were moments where he was talking about his wife, the fact that he wanted to see her again and everything, but like, it wasn't enough. Maybe I am influenced by Epic, because in that version you can see the devotion, but like, I still feel like the bare minimum was to show a bit more of Odysseus's love for Penelope. And granted, he did lose his memory of Penelope at one moment, but still, I feel like he didn't love her enough. Or at least you didn't see that he loved her enough. Another bone that I have to pick with the movie is that they started to give us these scenes where it's a bit more gruesome, a bit more creepy, with, for example, the Cyclops and him eating the soldiers, and there's this kind of tension, and it feels almost like a horror movie, okay? And they also did it with Circe and like a few other bits, but then they just stop. There's the scene with the sirens where I thought, like, for sure that that kind of tension and that kind of like horror aspect would still be there, and then there's Scylla and the same thing happens, like you see them get taken and everything, but it feels suddenly more like an action movie. So I was disappointed that they just kind of stopped doing those types of scenes and that the scenes took a kind of different turn in the rest of the movie. And it really makes me want to see these myths be adapted into horror movies. You know how there's the fairy tale series where it's like they did Pinocchio, Winnie the Pooh, I think, and Peter Pan? I want that, but with ancient Greece myths. So my final thoughts for this movie. It was pretty good. It was okay. I would not have paid to go see it if my mum hadn't want to take me. There are some good scenes, the acting was good, the story is overall kind of respected. It was good, okay, it was good, but I am way more excited for Epic. I think Epic is going to be so much better, and I really hope that it will get as much attention as this movie did, because I think that it's much more deserving of that attention. That's it. Bye!